Hi, this is Colleen with today's Daily Dose of Science. So today's Daily Dose video is inspired by the bananas that were sitting on my kitchen table this morning. As you can see, they were starting to turn brown, and I figured I probably should eat them pretty soon. But that led me to think about what is going on that causes them to turn brown, and what about this whole decay process? What is going on as foods decompose? Decomposition, or rotting, can be thought of as kind of a yucky process, but it's actually a vital part of recycling nutrients back into the earth. Sometimes we might notice that some things like bananas or apple turn brown and rot fairly quickly. That is due to a growth hormone called ethylene that is triggered when it is time for the fruits to ripen, and it produces a higher sugar content and makes them look and taste sweeter, which is vital to their continued existence. It is the production of ethylene gases that cause some fruits to ripen faster when they are kept inside a brown paper bag. It is also the production of ethylene gases that can lead to rotting fruits and vegetables. Although microorganisms also play a very important role in decomposition. This time-lapse video was made available by NSTA on their Daily Do website. Although I have to admit that occasionally some things like this happen in my refrigerator as well. One of the things that we can do that will not only help reduce landfill waste, it can help you create healthier soils, is composting. Composting can help turn this into this. I am no expert on composting. As a matter of fact, I'm trying it for the first time as a result of making this video, but I have reached out to try to get an expert's help on how to compost, as well as some of the science behind how composting works. Kenzie Huffer, as always, is going to help me learn.
Okay, so essentially the way that I work compost is that, well, anybody can work compost, is that it's a recipe. The recipe for a good compost is, I think it's like 30 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen, but you have to have both in order to compost. And when you're building a compost pile, essentially what you do is you take items that are higher in carbon and mix them with items that are higher in nitrogen. So higher carbon items are your brown compost, which is anything that's dried. Your high nitrogen compost is going to be anything that's, like, I think of it as kind of anything wet. Like if you have fresh lawn clippings, if you have your banana, if you have your kitchen scraps, all of those have higher nitrogen content. This is old hay that is 5 to 6 years old. It has composted very, very little because it's almost all brown compost. There's not enough nitrogen and moisture to create decomposition. So that's composted even though it's been sitting there for a really long time. It's decomposed very little because it doesn't have the right recipe. This next picture, you can see a lot of the pine shavings and stuff, but if you zoom in, you can see a whole bunch of this gray molding looking stuff, and those are actually mold spores. Those are signs of decomposition. So this compost pile has a pretty good mixture of brown and green compost, and it's in the process of decomposing. I actually was turning this to expose it to air. Anything that is green compost can essentially become brown compost, and so that's like your leaves. If your leaves or your grass clippings, if they're fresh and they're green, that's green compost. It's high nitrogen. If you lay them out and let them dry, the microbes break down that nitrogen and they metabolize it, and essentially what you're left with, like when you see a brown leaf, most of the nitrogen has been processed out of that and it's now high in carbon. Compost can also be aerobic or anaerobic. Anaerobic decomposition is decomposition that happens in the absence of oxygen. Your goal is to keep your compost aerobic. They often go from aerobic to anaerobic and back again. The aerobic decomposition is much faster than anaerobic. The other added advantage is that one of the byproducts of aerobic decomposition is heat. The reason that you want the heat is because the heat is what kills, and if you can keep your compost hot enough by keeping those aerobic microbes exposed to the air, then you're killing a bunch of the stuff that you don't want. So you can kill the seeds by keeping the heat high enough. It can also kill some of the bacteria that you might not want. Anaerobic decomposition smells bad. And it's the same thing with your your very, very green compost. All of that stuff produces methane, sulfur, like really stinky gases. So keeping your carbon to nitrogen ratios correct and keeping your compost pile aerobic will keep it from smelling bad. So if your compost starts smelling bad, you can remedy that by adding more brown matter, which will reduce the nitrogen to carbon ratio, and you need to expose it to more air to keep the anaerobic microbes working, because the aerobic microbes smell bad. Once I start turning it in the spring and adding water, that anaerobic decomposition slows down and I start bringing in more of the aerobic microbes. The advantage to the aerobic microbes is that they don't smell and they decompose things much faster. Aerobic microbes can decompose smaller items in less than 6 months, whereas anaerobic decomposition takes much longer, up to a year. This video would be the final product of compost that's been aging for roughly 3 years. I'm not super great at getting out and turning my compost, but it's now broken down into some unrecognizable, really nice looking dirt.
Thank you so much, Kenzie. So here I go, folks. Please join me. Let's start composting. There are directions for how to start your own compost bin in the links to this video. Once again, this is Colleen from the Science Zone, and thanks again for joining us on Daily Dose of Science.
If you enjoyed today's content and would like it to continue, please consider joining these generous supporters of the Science Zone and our virtual engagement platform by clicking the donate button here or on our website. Thank you.